What are my top three metrics to determine if you have a scaling problem? Let's find out in today's edition of SaaS Metrics School. My name is Ben Murray. Welcome. This is a bit of a follow-on episode from yesterday's episode number 280, where I talk growing versus scaling. Really important concept. I'll summarize it again here. But metric number one, and these are really kind of my foundational metrics when I'm reviewing my five-pillar SaaS metrics framework with founders, and we're focusing on foundational metrics that need to move in the right direction. These are my top three. And of course, there are a lot of top metrics lists, top five, top this, but metrics at the right stage of your business so important, but these are really important for SaaS operators as you're scaling. So first, gross revenue retention. If we're acquiring customers, we're users, we have to retain them. If we have this huge leaky bucket, think, really literally holding a bucket with a bunch of holes on the bottom, and we're pouring a bunch of customers in there, hoping we keep them, and then just pouring out the bottom, it's going to be very difficult to scale efficiently. Now, maybe you're growing because you're pouring a ton of investment in sales and marketing, but you're not scaling. So gross revenue retention, of course, that maxes out at 100%, and it counts for contraction and churn. Metric number two is gross profit percentage. So revenue less COGS. We know in SaaS, best of class is 80%. And that profile follows a certain pattern over time. Of course, it can be low in the beginning. Maybe we're heavily investing in COGS, but over time it has to become more efficient. So we need to know our overall gross profit, because low gross profit is one of those just hurdles that I see so many SaaS founders struggle with as they're trying to scale to profitability. And then margins by revenue stream. If we're running 60% gross profit in the 50s, we have to understand which revenue stream is contributing to that, because we may have subscriptions, usage, services. Maybe we have a little hardware sprinkled in too. If we have a point of sale system, for example, we have to know the margins, the economics by each revenue stream. That's why the SaaS P&L setup is so important. So margins, huge hurdle if we don't have good margins as we're scaling. Now, again, out of the gate, don't expect perfect gross profit, but it has to improve over time if we're going to scale, not grow. And then finally, the ROAS metric. So return on SaaS employees and contractors. This is a huge one because think about our SaaS P&L. The biggest investment in our SaaS P&L is people, whether that's employees and or contractors. That's say 60 to 80% of this expense on our SaaS P&L. We have to measure that. I think revenue per FTE has been so overplayed that we forget about it. That's an important metric, but ROAS metric is more accurate than revenue per FTE because it measures the amount of recurring revenue we're generating for every dollar of employee and contractor investment. Who cares how many FTEs I have? It's how much I'm investing in the employee base. And do we have operational leverage ability with that investment? So ROAS metric is so important. So if you're looking at your SaaS metrics data set, make sure you're calculating gross revenue retention, your margins by revenue stream, and the ROAS metric. And again, we want to see them moving in the right direction over time. We want to benchmark our business based on ARR and ACV size to see if we're scaling in the right direction, because again, there's a pattern that we're following in SaaS. Now, in last episode 280, I covered the difference between growing and scaling. Great concept brought up in the Profitability Playbook, Greg Crabtree podcast, and he's got some fantastic books as well. So growing is if we're for every dollar of incremental revenue, it takes us 80 cents to produce that revenue. And the next dollar is 80 cents. The next dollar is 80 cents. We're growing. Revenue may be going up, but we're not scaling because it's a linear pattern and we're not becoming more efficient. Now, scaling is for that incremental revenue, that dollar of revenue. Maybe it costs us 80 cents. Then the next one's 79 cents, 78 cents, and so on. We're scaling. So we're growing and becoming more efficient in that delivery of revenue, which is so important at some point in your SaaS journey. So those are my top three metrics to determine if you have a scaling or financial constraint problem. So if you like this episode, I'd love a 5-star review and rating. It helps get the word out. And we'll see you in the next edition of SaaS Metrics School.